Well, compliance is in fact the more general external environment, legal environment for the companies, the regulation and the change in regulations. And so we see in fact that a lot of different sectors were represented at both of the tables, but a lot of people came from the financial services, the energy sector, transportation, and then also retail and less regulated sectors. Because you see that depending on the sector, you will be dependent of more regulation than less. We also saw that a lot of different countries were represented, and we had very active risk managers from Poland, Slovenia, Italy, Luxembourg, and other countries. Well, that global compliance is in fact to be looked at one side from the external side. They were worried about, let's say, not only the speed of change of the regulation, because we also see that different countries have different regulations, also different speed of change of regulation. And it's very important to stay compliant in all these countries. Certainly when companies are acquiring companies in other overseas countries, mergers and acquisitions create in fact a risk and a challenge to have these, when integrating the new companies into the risk management of the global companies, to have in fact compliance in all these new countries that were acquired. On the other side, we also had several risk managers talking about what they called the compliance challenge in the whole value chain, in their procurement aspects, where in fact they have to be careful not only to comply themselves to the new regulation, but they have to be careful and work with the counterparties so that they also evaluate and can be sure that these counterparties in the value chain are also working in a compliant way. So that's in fact what we saw on the external side. When we look then at how this regulation is captured and then also promoted at the internal side, it's important to see that, for instance, in Poland, a lot of several companies are working with a type of self-assessment, so that when regulation is changing, they assess the change of regulation and see if in their internal activities management are able to comply to these changes in regulation. A remark also came from somebody who said, well, we do not see a lot of changes in regulation in our sector, but we see a very higher degree of enforcement of the regulation. On the other side, we had then people saying, well, it's important to have a corporate culture that captures regulation and that accepts that everybody in the company has to follow all regulations. There was also a remark from somebody who said, well, the term compliance is a bit not a neutral word. It's better to use terms like we will give you some training in some new types of changes in the external world. So more focusing on education than on the term specific compliance. So everybody's very aware that it's important, certainly for the reputational risk and the integrity of the companies, to be very aware of what's outside there, but also to be able to be sure that this regulation is followed by and put into the processes in internal of the companies. Well, if we refer to the results of the survey, we have a very nice graph where the risks are scheduled with their importance and with the level of mitigation. And if you go into that graph, you will see that compliance is one of the very high important risks, and it's a very low mitigated risk. Well, in fact, what that means, it is, if regulation is there, you really have to comply, and you have to organize internally that your management and your managers are really knowledgeable of the regulation and know how to react in different situations. What I saw and the reaction of several participants was, in fact, that the best way to work is try to be involved as soon as possible when new regulation is proposed or thought of, and be involved in the discussion platforms and try to be involved and explain why certain legislation can harm their management and their businesses. So it's more on the prevention side than on the prevention side is try to inform regulators and so that they are aware, and to build regulation that is acceptable. On the protection side, it's in fact procedures in your company to explain, to educate your managers to comply to the regulation.